Okay guys, so what we're going to be going through in this video is how to get your first client in 24 hours. So we're going to be looking at things like real speed, how we can do this really quickly with the initial setup basically. So we'll go through simply why this is possible in 24 hours. Setting up some local services ads, so inbound lead generation, which is like one of the first stages of our sales process. The contractor network, pricing, your profit margins, that kind of thing. And then looking at a speed to lead setup as well, which is how do we get to that lead as soon as possible to land them in a shorter time frame as possible as well. So why this is possible in 24 hours, because I know you see loads of things online, make 100 grand in 24 hours and all that bollocks. That's not what we talk about here. You pretty know I'm very transparent with how these businesses work. At the same time, you can act very quickly in the early stages with setup. So how we do that is by a good online setup framework. If you haven't seen my online setup framework, there's loads of videos on it. Simply things like a website, Google My Business, you can get set up really quickly. Even if we scrap the website for now, we park that to one side, and we set up Google My Business at a very early stage, well then there's no reason why we can't just even generate some leads off the back of my Google My Business with an inbound lead generation set up at the same time as well. So like I said, we can use Google's tools, which is Google My Business and LSA, and then we are going to focus on speed to lead. Now speed to lead I'll break down for you later in this video, and simply how we get to that lead in a short amount of time frame to turn them into income. How do we turn them into a job? How do we make money off the back of them? So that is why it's possible in 24 hours. Good online setup framework. Just use Google's tools to get started with. Set up Google My Business profile. Don't necessarily need a website. You could do a small landing page if you wanted to, if you really want to aim at doing this quickly. At the same time, you want to do a website and we do things in a process by building the proper foundations of the business, then yes, we're going to be looking at a website or a detailed landing page to get things moving. So next is setting up local services ads. So if you don't know, local services ads are something that Google launched a few years ago. Basically really good to get a service-based business off the ground nice and quick. Bring in some leads, start building out your sales process, and simply just getting some leads coming through without really having to worry about doing too much. So this is great because when you're in working a 9 to 5 and you know you can't be going out doing loads of organic traffic and things like that, and you know email outreach and so on and so forth, then we want some leads coming through the door in a short amount of time frame as possible in order to start making some money. You start making some money and then you get to a position that you can reinvest into different advertising strategies as well. Quit your 9 to 5, work full time on a business. If I knew about this when I was a barrister's clerk for all those years, and when I first started my first cleaning company, I didn't know about local services ads. I'm not even sure they were around, to be honest with you. I'm pretty sure they weren't. If I did know about them, my journey would have been a lot quicker, and the blueprint that I use to this day would have meant that I would have left my 9 to 5 a hell of a lot sooner, which is obviously what we do day in, day out at the SEC now. So how do we set this up? Now this is what we like to call a 24-hour lead machine, because you can get this set up, you can get verified in 24 hours, sometimes 48 hours, but ideally 24, by making sure that we're doing the verification process correctly, because LSA has a verification process, and there's a few bits that you'll need that I'll discuss as well. So what we want to look at straight away is choosing the correct categories for the services that we're going to be offering in the business. So obviously at the early stages of this, like what we're talking about here, this is about landing our first clients. So we would have already had our services set up, the services that we know that we want to include into the business. So let's say we're looking at house cleaning, or what Google call a move in or move out clean. I call it an end of tenancy clean, which is obviously when someone leaves a rental property, they move on to the next one. The house needs a deep clean. It's really profitable and can be applied to both commercial and residential sectors as well. So let's say for this one, we set on our category, we select house cleaning as the main category. Now there'll be a few subcategories that come underneath that. They're pretty obvious to take a look at. You just need to decide what you want to include. There's things like curtain cleaning, deep cleaning, things like that. The move in and move out cleans again is an option. Oven cleaning, that kind of thing. just making sure that we've got the right categories on to get started with. You can reduce those categories at an early stage and just have house cleaning on as the main one, and then we can just see what leads kind of generate through the door. So once we've then selected our categories, we need to upload our verification process. So the verification process, you need to include your business license. So if you're in the UK, your limited company certificate of incorporation, that's going to be enough to get that one approved. It will link to Google My Business as well. We need to upload our insurance. As you know, if you're running our outsourcing model, you have to have insurance for the business. However, we can keep that insurance quite limited because we use the contractor liability to make sure that we keep our insurance nice and low, and the contractor's insurance is actually what we're going to be using for the liability purposes. There's a few other bits of information like your address and things like that, and you have to have a review on your LSA profile. Google, if you're listening, this is an absolute joke. It's ridiculous because we're a startup business. We're just launching LSA. Why would we have reviews on our LSA profile when it's a brand new profile? It's ridiculous, but they make you do it anyway. So you need to go and get a review for your LSA profile. So if you have existing clients, fine, just get them to fill it out. It doesn't link to your Google My Business reviews. Again, ridiculous, I know, but however, we just make it work. So go and get a review off a friend or something like that, and just get a review on there so that LSA becomes live. Once you've ticked all those boxes, LSA will become live. You set your budget, and that's it. We can turn it on and we can get started. Your Google My Business profile, which is important to set this up with the Google tools, because it has to be linked to your LSA profile. They don't allow you to run LSA without having a Google My Business verified profile linked to it. So make sure that this is really important and you've got your Google My Business linked up. It will link up automatically off the back of the email that you create. So make sure you're using the same setup, same business name, and that will link automatically. If it doesn't link, you just get in touch with LSA. They've got a really good support line in all fairness to Google, and they'll get you verified pretty had Set your budget. We recommend a budget of £5 to £10 per day to get started with. Even if we said that we had a lead cost of £5 per day, then you can see where we're going to generate some really good leads off the back of it. Like off £5 per day, we could be looking at 30 leads a month. We see in some cases people having £2 to £3 per lead, which is crazy. So that budget is enough to get some leads through the door at a very early stage and get the business profitable nice and quickly. Once you set your budget, wait for Google to go live. You get fully verified, your ads will turn on automatically. As long as you have obviously the ad section on the dashboard, it will just say on or off. Make sure it's on. As soon as it's on, we go live. That's how quickly it is. 24 hours, you've got leads coming through the door. That quick. Now obviously having a certain blueprint that we do day in, day out, it makes the lead flow a lot easier, but you can still generate leads off the back of this really quickly. It's just about closing those leads. So we got leads coming through the door. Now what we need is a contractor network, because we don't want you doing the work yourself. You're probably working a 9 to 5, and we also don't want you hiring staff. Staff are a pain in the arse when it's your own startup business. Simple as that. If you want to take on pensions, NI, all the rest of it, all the taxes that come with it, and the headache of hiring staff, then feel free to do it. But I can assure you now, I'm not the coach for you. I teach with a contractor model because it makes the business so much easier. So our contractor network is where we need to be taking a look at, and we can kind of do this in the same time as doing LSA, to be honest with you. It kind of be a background after we've done our setup, because the verification is just jumping on the computer and getting it set up. So what do we want to do with our contractor network? Well, we want to take a look at local contractors using Google to start with. Keep it nice and easy. We don't need to overcomplicate it. And what we're doing is we're finding independent contractors and smaller businesses that are going to mean that they want more work. They're not necessarily doing the lead generation that we're going to be doing, and they're not going to be using our same blueprint when it comes to the setup of the business. They might not even have a website. Honestly, they might not have a website, which is fine, because we can see their social proof online. We can look at business verification, business history, that kind of thing, make sure they're going to be a good contractor. And all I want you to do at this stage is just open a line of communication with them. You're literally just giving them a call, having a chat, checking out things like day rates, what their availability is like, how they do a job. Say it's a jet washing job on a driveway. Well, how do they do that job? What does the specification look like? And how easy is it for them to kind of fulfill that job as well? So I'm opening up a line of communication, and that really for me is just about relationship building, like beginning to build that relationship with my contractors. My contractors now that I've worked with, some of them 8 to 10 years, you know, they know exactly how they work, they know how my business model works, and it's very, very easy for me to get a job come in, send it across to them, they come back to me, specification, price, this is when I can get the job done. Then I ascertain my own profit margin on that job. I go and liaise with the client, check availability, make sure they're happy with the specification, and I'll obviously get the job across the line by closing that job with the right cost and things like that as well. So open a line of communication. We've discussed availability, their rates, their service area, seeing what areas they cover. Do they do any other services as well? What you find in our industry is that a lot of contractors will overlap with different services that you will probably include in your business. So if my external cleaning company, for example, I didn't have loads of contractors, apart from the Tesla contract, which was obviously nationwide, but the contractors that I did have, they also did a number of different services as well. So some of them would do gutters, window cleaning, jet washing, graffiti removal, abseiling, and then, you know, next minute I've got one contractor that does 4 or 5 different services, which makes my life so much easier. So that is where we kind of want to be looking at with our contractors. Begin to build out your CRM if you're going to be using a CRM, or just use a simple spreadsheet just to start building out your contractor database. So when a lead comes in, you know exactly who you're going to call. You want at least kind of 2 to 3, 3 is the ideal mark for the amount of contractors per service, because when that initial lead comes in and we go out to the contractors, then we can take a look at a few different things. We can take a look at specification, obviously the cost, their availability, and seeing at what contractor is going to give us kind of the best margins for us to work with as well. Because again, relating back to like a jet washing on a driveway, right? The specification is pretty much always going to be exactly the same. It's really going to come down to price and availability. Because in terms of price, you'll get one contractor that's really, really busy and he's charged you £1,000 for a driveway. We'll have another one that just kind of wants the work and he's charged you 150 quid. We'll have one that's middle ground and, you know, he wants more work, but, you know, he's still pricing near enough retail. So he might charge you 350, 400 pound. Now we know straight away we're not using the top one. He's obviously too busy. He's not going to be a good fit for us, or she. And they might be doing some lead generation that we don't know about, so on and so forth. They just could have loads and loads of work. That's why they're pricing it high. It's called an I don't want to do it price. And the I don't want to do it prices are good for us when we price them, but not good for us using contractors. So I'm probably going to take a look at one of the lower ones, mainly because I know the specification's really, really easy to do. They've got a jet wash, they've got the right tools, if it's got sanding or something like that. The specification's really easy. It's just the case that, you know, they probably want more work, so they're pricing it accordingly. So fine, we can take a look at that. We can take a look at the lower price at that stage. Go back to the client, ascertain your own profit margin. I'll probably take a middle ground. So if I had someone that come in 150, 200 pound for a driveway jet wash, I'm probably going to be sitting around 350, 400 pounds subject to the location. If it's in London, I'll probably charge a bit more. And if there's a few add-ons as well, I'll get it agreed with the client. And then I'm passing that lead essentially off to the contractor by giving them the go ahead, giving them the address, get the job booked in, and then make sure they get the job done. I'm then getting my contractor to sign that job off just to make sure that the job's done and everyone's happy, so that I then get paid and he gets paid, or she as well. Okay, so that's the contractor network. So build out your contractors as you go. And then we've already just touched on kind of pricing and profit margins there. So I'm asking each contractor for a quote, ideally 3 contractors for the initial lead, checking the specifications and the price that they come in at as well. And then what I've put here is that you can kind of start nice and easy to get that concept off the ground pretty quickly. So, you know, sitting around 20%, 20 to 50% subject on the job. If it's a driveway, we don't need to be doing 20%. We can already push the boundaries a little bit more, subject to kind of what rates you got coming in. If you had someone come in at £300, then you're really, really happy with the way that they've delivered. They delivered you the quote. you know the specifications bang on, then yes, you know, your margins are going to be a little bit lower because you're going in at already a higher price, which is close to retail. Now, you need to do your research based on retail rates in your location. I don't have the answer for everyone. I have rough ideas. I know a driveway is going to be in the region of 350 to 400 pound where I'm from in Essex for like a single driveway with just the jet wash and maybe a sanding. So for me, I'd want a contractor around 200 pound, which is absolutely fine. You know, it's still enough for a contractor to make 200 pound in a day's work. Probably not even a day's work. But you've got to do your research based on your location. That's really easy to do. Just take a look at some other contractors around the area. You can put in a few dummy calls as well into contractors. Send them a picture of your driveway, for example, and ask them what the cost is going to be. It literally takes a couple of hours, or not even that, half an hour, and you just got to wait for the cost to come back. So that's a bit of market research on the pricing, and then you go in and put your own markup on the cost as well. So the final thing is about pricing per job. I see it quite often that people want to do an hourly rate and things like that. It can be done at a later stage in the business, but I would rather do that with what I call service knowledge. When you have a lot more knowledge around your services, you know roughly how long a job's going to take. So when I used to price up some of my construction work, for example, I would do it on day rates because I knew that a 5-bedroom house or something like that, for example, would be 2 people for a day, and then I could negotiate a day rate on those contractors, but I could then price the job as a whole, which therefore would make my profit margin a lot greater. So ideally just price the job to start off with. That's going to make it nice and easy to get you started with. Okay, so 24-hour framework, onboarding your contractors at the same time whilst getting verified with LSA. This is going to keep to our 24-hour timeline, do it as quick as possible. And then we want to focus on speed to lead. So what happens when that first lead comes in? How do we react? How do we get them across the line? How do we get the information that we need so that the contractors can price up the job? So on and so forth. That is where we focus on speed to lead. So as that lead comes in, I'm going to call them immediately, ideally within 10 minutes. You can have a virtual receptionist set up to make sure that you don't even miss that lead in the early stages. And again, that's something that we have a pretty dialed in blueprint on now in terms of getting that set up. I'm then going to ask for the job details so that I can then pass them across to my contractor. I get my contractor to come back with a specification, quote, and timeline they can do it in. And then I'm going to go quote straight to the client and then lock that price in and get the job on. You can either take a deposit structure if you want to really lock it in. If not, just get the job in the diary. There shouldn't be any issues. You could do a follow-up the day before just to make sure they're 100% happy with everything and the time that the guys are going to be turning up and things like that as well. Just remember that speed equals trust in these scenarios, because a lot of the time in our industry, if someone wants to get their driveway jet washed or something like that, like the weather's nice, they're thinking about getting their driveway done, well then they're probably going to be ringing around because they want to speak to someone there and then. So if you can take that call, then we don't even need to be doing kind of a speed to lead because you're already going to have that call there. It's dealing with the speed to lead in the back end. If you get the lead come through, like on your LSA dashboard, for example, then 10 minutes is the ideal call-in time. You need to be ringing them within 10 minutes to really kind of get that job across the line at an early stage. How we counteract that is by onboarding a virtual receptionist to make sure that we never miss that lead. Again, dialed in blueprint, it's exactly what we do. I still have a virtual receptionist to this day. So yeah, I'm then going to confirm all the details with the client and the contractor to make sure that that job is 100% solid and booked in the diary. And then obviously the contractor completes the job, client signs the job off. I'm immediately going to invoice for payment. When it's residential, I immediately invoice for payment. I pretty much immediately invoice commercial clients anyway, but I give them a 30-day period to actually pay the job, just because that's kind of the way that commercial works. You can still set your own timelines. Most of my guys do like 14 days for commercial, but residential, we want that same day payment, 100%. So just remember that a fast close equals more likely to actually win the job, and that is where the speed to lead system is really, really important. Because you're just going to get these leads dialed in a short amount of time frame as possible and get these jobs across the line. So that is pretty much everything on how to get your client first clients in 24 hours, like literally as quick as possible. This is one of the easiest ways that I know how to do it. Obviously, we go into this a lot more in depth, our program at the SCC, but this should get you your first client across the line. So give it a go. Let me know how you get on. As always, if you want to know anything else, just drop a note in the comment section, and I'm more than happy to create a video on it. At the same time, you want to speak to me or my team, there'll be a link in the comment section where you can jump on a call and we can discuss how all of this works, and how we get our clients replacing their income in a short amount of time frame as possible, so they can work full-time on a business. And who doesn't want to work full-time on a business? I don't know anyone. Hope you enjoyed the video. See you soon.